You look great. Were you like in Bahamas right now? Like, what's the deal?
Right? Texas is absolutely gorgeous this morning. You guys want to see it? Yeah, that's my current situation. Not bad, right?
Nice. Not bad at all. This is my current
Yeah.
situation. Like, hey, gray
Hey, I love
walls,
it.
cinder blocks behind me.
Yes, yes, absolutely. You mentioned having like a chill morning, so I'm having a lazy morning here and
Oh,
still
must be
drinking
nice.
coffee.
Yeah.
Yes.
Um, yeah.
Okay, so intentionality. Yeah, you did not tell me any of that, but I'm
No.
excited. I'm here for it.
Well, yeah. So intentionality is an interesting thing. I feel like I was saying it kind of ties into a few things.
Hmm.
First of all, from the time Misty was on earlier this week, we had Noam on, and there was a sense of like giving people their flowers, giving people a nod, recognizing people who have or just doing great work, right?
Yeah, love
So
that.
I saw that post. My wife just put that post up just like last night, right? And just looking back on that time, she was a
Mhm.
fantastic leader. Like she really did empower and do a great work like while she was in that seat. Um,
Yeah.
and then I heard you talking, and all the things you were saying over like the last 2.5 conversations have been such good stuff, and a lot of that, it just resonates with me in so many ways.
Yeah.
And I love the fact that you mentioned that you're working with Jenna Zaffino,
I was. Yeah. Yeah.
right?
She's phenomenal. Love her. Yes.
Yes,
Yes.
absolutely love her too.
Yes.
And this is gonna sound weird to say. I made a mistake. I don't think it was a mistake, but I had a guest on a few weeks ago, and I was talking about something. We are just having this conversation, like, yeah, that's true, yeah. And then they mentioned someone that they had worked with that was mentoring them, and I said, oh, I hear that person in you, and it's almost like they semi took offense to that. Like, no, that's me
Oh,
too.
okay. Okay. I can see that. I
You
can
can see
also
that.
see how you meant it. Maybe how I would interpret it differently, but I could see how they could get there. Yeah.
Yeah. So now I'm careful with that because I
Hmm.
almost had to just get a sense of that because I don't want to give too much credit to the Jenna Zaffino when much of that credit goes to you.
I see what you're saying. Yeah. But also, it's like kind of like when you pick a Pilates instructor or a coach or anything. Like, I think if you're doing it with intentionality, kind of for the theme, right? You're doing it with somebody that has values that you value as well. That's on a track that you see yourself on. Like that's why you pick a coach, right?
Right.
So of course there would be. Hopefully, I would be honored to have some similarities to Jenna, you know. But
Right.
I picked her because I was like, yes, I love what you value. I love what you're about. I feel that too. There are things that she does and ways that she shows up very intentionally that like I want to learn how to do better. And
Mm.
so she was an absolutely fantastic person to have in my corner. And if I'm even like a tiny bit like her, that's phenomenal. Like huge
That's
compliment.
yeah, that's a huge compliment.
Yeah. Yeah.
And going staying in that coaching vein, and like for those who are watching, if you have anything to share, please put it in the comments. Um, staying in that vein, it's like, well, that's already in you. They are awakening that which is already in you. They're not giving you something new,
Yes. 100%.
right? Right.
Yes.
But for you to recognize that this is the best person to pull this out of me,
Mhm. Mhm. That's such a good
that's
way to say it. Yeah. Yeah.
right.
Who is the best person to pull the best stuff out of you? Like that's who
Yeah,
you want in your corner, you know?
right.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
are we doing that on a regular basis? Do we know what we need? Do
Mm,
we know what we need to pull out and timing with all those things, right? Like, are we chasing after that, like that mentoring piece, right? Like, do
mhm.
we have the courage to say to that person way out there or way up there on that pedestal, I want to learn from you?
Yeah. That's scary. It's super scary too when you like you see things about them that you're like if I could just do this then I could be there or I want to emulate that or you know how did they get the courage to do this, but sometimes the gap between where you feel like you are and where you feel like somebody else is feels so big that it can be terrifying to reach out. um, I've never had anything bad happen from reaching out though. Like the worst is they're
Yes.
like, no, I'm not available. And you're like,
I'm
okay,
not available. Yeah.
well, all right, that's fine. Move on, no big deal.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah,
It's true. That
yeah.
not available can be like you're not that important enough to me to make time for me.
For
Right?
sure. That's 100% how it felt.
Because I'm
But,
not gonna lie. That's yeah. That's another one of my wife's lines too. Like if a woman's into you, she'll make time for you, right? So if she's
right.
not making time for you, she's just not into you, right? So
Yeah.
is it the same thing with mentoring?
I think so. Yeah,
Mm.
for sure. For sure. But also some people just do not have the capacity. Like this one girl I reached out to, she was like, I just don't even do that anymore. I was like,
I just
okay.
okay.
And you're like, she just has so much going on. She's like, I don't. I can refer you, whatever, but I just don't do it. I'm like, cool,
Yeah.
you know.
Yeah.
But also, like, I don't do it, right? But if somebody
Mhm.
reached out to me and was like, hey, I really want to learn from you, would I put, and I felt like a good vibe with them, would I put effort into making that happen? Yeah. So,
Mm.
it just wasn't a good match. That's fine.
Yeah. Yeah. So
Yeah.
would you actively look for that person to mentor to do that?
hmm yes, I am trying to put some feelers out right now. Yeah, I would actively look for that. I guess I am more so in terms of like the mentorship aspect. I am open. I would love to have that happening. It's happening in a very small scale. In terms of what it needs to look like, compensation wise, structure wise, what do they very clearly get out of it? All the
Yes.
details. I go like down this detail like rabbit hole, right?
Yes.
I have no idea, and my heart is for newer instructors. And I also recognize that they have just spent a lot of money often in training.
Yes.
And so I am not trying to like grab new
Milk them.
instructors and like be like, well, now you need to spend more. And like,
Yes.
that's not my heart at all. So
Hmm.
yeah, so right now I have a few instructors that like are in my immediate local circle that I will get together with, do things with, offer time of questions, like stuff like that. Um, Observation hours, stuff like that. But what I'm
Hmm.
working on, and this is like, I haven't announced this to anybody, but I'm working on something called the Pilates Instructor Survival Guide. And it's
Okay.
essentially how to show up on purpose with purpose for the long haul, kind of filling in those gaps of teaching to training. Whether you
Yes.
took that training yesterday or 5 years ago, um, all that stuff of like, who am I as a person and then as an
Hmm.
instructor, and how do I want to show up intentionally so that I
Yes.
don't burn out, you know?
Yeah. Yeah.
And hopefully making that content more accessible to newer instructors, or to somebody that just doesn't have the resources to, to invest in one-on-one mentoring, which I couldn't either at certain points in my life. So I get it.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Just for those in the crowd, a quick show of hands if you are right now presently mentoring somebody.
Yeah.
Just a curiosity, whether it's a group or it's like an individual. And my body mill is saying, love this idea. Shannon Precor is saying mentoring both helps both people to grow, which is so true.
100%. Yes.
Yeah,
Yes.
yeah, yeah. That's yeah. So I'm just curious about that and what that looks like. I'm going to be in the fall. Okay, cool, amazing, Shannon. The well, hi everyone. So I think that's key, right? And the
Mm-hmm.
one part that people don't spend enough time thinking about is just like how we perceive ourselves. Like we don't want to be like, sometimes we don't feel like we're even worthy to be a mentor. I don't know enough. I'm not far enough along in my journey. I don't want to purport to be this expert. You know what I mean? So I love
Mm-hmm.
Shannon's comment about both of us learning. This is something where we can both learn. I have a little bit more years under my belt in this area. So let me help
Mm-hmm.
you there and just kind of be grounded with that, right?
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. I think it's awesome. And I do think that's one kind of piece. I don't know if it's like this in other like service offerings, but I like we talked a little bit about this last time, but kind of like the trajectory of the Pilates instructor, right, has
Yes.
vastly changed, and the expectations
Mm-hmm.
of training and mentorship and apprenticeship, right? And in some ways, I think that's amazing because you have like the sky's your limit, right? Like you could take a training tomorrow and
Yep.
then whether or not you're the most qualified, you could make your own app the next day, right? Like there's other ways to do it.
Yep.
But that piece of apprenticeship that was built into that is sometimes being lost. And so I do think there's a massive gap right now in that area that, yeah, I don't know. I don't have an answer for that, but it's just something I'm seeing as I'm watching people go through different methods of training now.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's definitely a gap. And I think that we still definitely have to create or kind of cultivate that appetite for it, because you're right. I can get an app. I can start training things. I can get funding and just open a building and just do it and hire
Yeah,
people. Like
absolutely.
people do that.
Mm-hmm.
And some people succeed doing that too, right? Like, and
Yeah,
they just,
yeah.
and it's like, yeah, I've had people on that and pulled out. So it's an anomaly, but it
Mm-hmm.
works for some people, right? So,
Absolutely. Yeah, for sure.
yeah. So I don't know. So I've been thinking about that. And my guy that I have, I'm gonna read this in a second.
Mm-hmm.
One of the guys that I'm working with is, I said to him point blank, "You're my part of my 5-year plan to becoming a teacher." Right. So like he's doing training with me, but it's like when we do stuff, I'm like giving him exercises, but I'm also teaching him what I'm looking for when I'm teaching the exercise.
Mm-hmm.
So it's not
Mm-hmm.
like just I'm educating on how to do an exercise or how to do it on his own. I'm educating him on what I'm seeing, why I'm cueing, why we're doing this exercise next. And if there's a time when we're doing the order, for example, I may be like, okay, this is normally the next exercise because of this, and this, but this is what you
Mm-hmm.
need right now because of
Yes.
this, and this.
Yes.
You know what I mean? So I'm
Yes,
not
I
shooting
do.
down the order. Like I'm just trying to I'm
Mm-hmm.
trying to give them like all these different things. So
Yeah.
it's a good practice, everyone too. Like when you think about it, like it just makes you that much sharper as a teacher as well. When you have to go back to why are you teaching it this way to explain it to somebody else as well.
100, yes, 100%. Absolutely.
Yeah, yeah. Here's Shannon's comment. So, as an
Mm-hmm.
officer in the Canadian Armed Forces Cadet Program, we strive to provide mentorship for officers, especially cadets. Yeah, so it's great when it's
Mm-hmm.
actually like a structured program. It's when you can lean on that structured program, that's awesome. So I think that one, we're making up, or two, like you're trying to establish like what that looks like for your community. That's great, right? So
Mm-hmm.
it's good.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Nice. All right, so here are some of the questions that I had
Yeah.
that I didn't get
Yeah.
to last week.
Yes.
Um, because
You're
even
right.
I was like doing a conversation. I was thinking like, I can't go there now. She's making a good point. Let's just let that go. Like, you know what I mean?
I'm
So
so
listen,
sorry.
no,
It's
no,
just,
no. This,
if you leave me too long, we'll end up in a way different spot than we started.
it's all good. Like
Yeah.
I personally believe that's where we needed to go. So I'm not gonna be like,
Cool.
let's go back.
Right.
So we'll do that. But I did
Cool.
want to
Yeah.
ask you, like legit, like how did you find Pilates?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I started to hit on that a little bit in our last
A little
one, but
bit,
not until like the very end, right?
right?
And I feel like I have tried probably, well, at the time I found Pilates, probably every fad exercise movement that there was, like, Shanti, hip hop abs, that was about it,
Yes.
Zumba, yoga, some kind of like, combo things.
Yeah.
At
Every
that time, like,
fusion. Yeah.
right, yeah, I did
Yeah.
that. I didn't like belong to like a cool gym or anything. I wasn't in sports, and so I would just like DirecTV was becoming a thing where you could record stuff, and I would like record exercise channels and do stuff. But as I mentioned in like towards the end of the last our last combo, whatever part that was, I have a genetic disorder which causes it's connective tissue disorder, and a large part of that is joint dislocation, in addition to like
Yes.
joint pain, fatigue, and then a lot of internal systems being affected. And so the more I would try to work out, I would like at first it would feel good, but then if I would push myself like even a little bit, I would hurt myself. And I've actually found Pilates after watching So You Think You Could Dance. And tiny little, thing about me is I cry very little, especially when it comes to things on TV. I have
Mhm.
like no connection to these things. My husband will cry, like I'll be looking over, it's like a commercial about like a dad and his son doing something together. And he's like, ah! I'm like, what is
There's something in my
wrong?
eye. Yeah,
Right.
yeah,
Like
right.
every little thing is like, he feels it. And I
Nice.
love that. And I like will strive for that, but I'm not there. But So You Think You Can Dance is one of the only TV shows I have cried at, which is so weird. Like of all
Yeah.
the shows. But I really think it was like watching people move their body like so freely and without limitation, and to have
Yes.
that strength and also like joy in what they were doing with it. It was really beautiful to me, and I that's something I
See
have
ya.
always wanted as a human with a
Yes.
body, and I just
Great.
didn't know how
Yeah.
to get that. And so I saw this like 3-second clip of a girl. They showed she had gotten eliminated actually, and they kind of do that like rewind of their past on the show. And there's this
Yes.
tiny little section of her on a reformer. I have been trying to find this clip for like 10 years. So if anyone has it, like, let me
Yes.
know. But I didn't know what Pilates was. And so I started Googling like machine with springs for dancers. It's kind of like what I was trying to type
That's
into
your
Google.
start point. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's how I found Pilates.
Great.
And then I was like, okay, I saw a few videos for the Aero Pilates machine, and I was like sold. I'm like, yes, this is what I want. This is what I need. Got
Mm.
that, got that. And then I started taking like just doing YouTube videos, and then Pilates Anytime came out. And I was like doing some of those videos at home. I had no idea what they were talking about or what I was doing, but I remember very distinctly feeling that I could feel my body moving, one,
Yes.
my muscles feeling like they had gotten a workout, like I could
Like they
feel
were being.
things.
Do you get that sense of them being
Yeah.
like awakened for the first time, sort of thing?
Yes. Yes.
Okay.
Yes. But also and I'm always careful with people that have like autoimmune things, chronic fatigue, chronic pain,
Yes.
because I felt like a lot of times when you already have so many sensations, so it's hard to differentiate. Is this
Yeah. That seems.
sensation like, is
Yeah. Paint
is
the
the muscle
picture.
working? Yeah.
Right. Yeah.
Like I don't know if this is making sense to people, but it feels like sometimes feeling my muscles makes me go like, oh, that's gonna hurt. Like because I'm so
Yes.
used to like the talking from my body is already at such a high level that sometimes talking
Okay.
more, I associate it with that pain, right? And so
That.
yeah,
Sorry.
does
Sorry.
that make
One
sense?
second.
Mm-hmm.
It does, but then it doesn't. Like, and
Yeah,
I
that's
because I
fine.
have no like zero frame of
Yeah.
reference for this.
Yes.
You know
Okay.
what I mean?
So
Like
I
so.
do. Okay. So imagine that, like, that feeling when you hit your funny bone. Okay.
Okay. Yes.
Imagine that happens to you often. Just like walking around in your everyday life, it
And
just
you're like
kind of
ah
goes
like that
off. You're like,
weird.
oh, and it kind
Yes.
of maybe radiates up a little bit. And
Okay.
then
Yes.
imagine that is often, and it even happens sometimes randomly when you go to use your arm, like pick up a jug or something, right?
Yes.
And
Yes.
then your trainer has you do a bicep curl, and you might
Mm.
brace and grip and like prepare for the fact that often when you move your arm you get this like radiating pain, and then you might feel your bicep come on, and you're feeling all this like new like energy or like awakening, right?
Yes.
But it is hard to, you almost have to consciously be like, okay, is that pain or is that just my muscles talking to me? Because often you're used to
Yes.
that happening at the same time. So for it to not happen with pain, it's like you have to
Yes.
consciously be like, what is happening? Is
That
it
is
okay?
so distracting.
It's very distracting. Yes. And it's like a mental like 20, piece checklist of like, is
Yes.
this okay? Is this range of motion okay? How much weight could I lift? If I go that far and at this angle, then that's pain plus muscle, right? Or
Yes.
like, and you
And
have
how
to,
much
it's
of
the
this can
stance.
how much can I exert myself today and not feel this for the next 4 days?
Yeah. And what if you don't know until day 2 if you overdid it or not? Like, and
Every
that's,
time.
yeah, yeah, for sure. So that's been my
Wow.
experience with moving my body. Pilates has been so far for me uh, the least complicated way to figure all of that out. And I remember distinctly
Yes.
having a, a feeling of, I feel my muscles, I don't feel my joints hurting, and I didn't overdo it. And to me, this was like magic. Like, nobody would
Yes.
understand how amazing this is. And I try to explain it to like my husband, who's really, he loves lifting weights. And
Mhm.
he's like, yeah, that's like what people feel when they work out. Like, that's the normal thing, you know?
Can I can I draw an analogy to that? Like
Yes, yes.
when it's funny, we're talking about my wife right now. I went through a divorce
Mm-hmm,
and then was single for a season,
mm-hmm,
then started dating, and then I was talking to my client this day about like how great it is since I met this person and things are so going so well, and
mm-hmm.
we did this and it was fun and it was fun. And I'm just explaining just normally how things go, and then he said, "That's how it's supposed to feel,"
Yes, yes,
and I was like,
absolutely.
yeah, but he's like, no, no, that's like that's norm. That is supposed to be the norm.
Mm-hmm,
And for your husband to hear you explain this revelation that I did a workout and I'm not sore in the wrong places for the long
mm-hmm,
amount of time,
mm-hmm.
that's like me going, yeah, like I did TRX and I felt like that yesterday.
Right. Yes. Absolutely. It's a great analogy. I actually have a friend going through, it's so crazy you're saying that because I had a friend explaining that exact situation to me.
Yeah.
And it was like, I didn't know it could be like this. It was the takeaway, right? And yeah, same thing. So for me, that's Pilates. And honestly, it has taught me so much about my body that then I can take that understanding, like I had to figure less out, right? So then I can take that into other modalities if and when I like to. But honestly, it's kind of like less it's less of a risk to do what I know works and doesn't,
I was like, well, why would you leave?
Right. Yeah. I'm like, oh, this works good.
You
I'll
have
stick to
one
this.
girlfriend, let's get another one. It's like, no, why don't you
Right.
just keep what you right. Yes, I
Yeah,
get you.
yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah.
So that's how I found it. Completely by accident and typing
Yeah.
weird things into Google.
Yeah. I can imagine how, well, okay, let me ask you this. Do you have a lot of people coming in that have those kind of chronic pain experiences? And are you
Mm-hmm.
like, is that someone that is drawn to you or that you look for to give them that
Yeah,
sense of freedom that you found?
it definitely is. Yeah. So I like to, this is a bad joke, but I always joke with my husband. I'm like, my clients often are like 55 and honestly like 75, right? And I joke that like I am actually like a little old lady inside, and that is why I relate with like my 70 plus people. I'm like,
Yeah.
oh, you're constipated? Me too. This is what worked really well for me yesterday. Oh, your
Hmm.
joints are flaring up with the rain. Mine too. Like,
Yeah.
like
Your
I get
bodies
it. I know where
sympathize.
you're at.
Yeah.
But yeah, absolutely. And I also I it's a hard balance of like how much of myself and my story do I share, but when I do, especially like on my business page or whatever, the feedback is because I don't think people would look at me and assume that anything is wrong, right?
True.
And I'm youngish, I'm fit-ish, I'm thin-ish, and so people just think like
Mm.
young, fit, thin, they're fine, they're healthy. And the women that I specifically work with the most often are in a different camp, and so when I share that, like,
Yes.
hey, actually, I know what it's like to have to balance like movement with fatigue levels and movement with pain levels, then they are
Yes.
like, oh, you're not
Oh.
going to push me past what I can't do. They've already had movement experiences where they have been told to do things, not given space to figure out how they feel best themselves. And often that can be very painful and a discouraging cycle. And so when I
Yes.
share a little bit about like, I get that, and my goal is not to have you do like, 100 reps of something just because, like, I want you to find what works for you and how you feel awesome, and we're gonna work towards figuring that out together.
Yes.
Then they're receptive to that. But I have to put it out there sometimes because otherwise, it's like that's not the perception, if that makes sense.
If that makes sense. That's like my
Does that make sense?
existence. Well, that's my
Okay, yeah.
existence. Like that is
Yeah.
fully it, right? Like you live in this
Hmm.
place of being prejudged,
Yeah. Hmm. Yeah. 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 Yeah.
right?
What is that like for you? Expand on that.
I mean, on so many different levels. Like you look at
Yeah.
like you're a guy, like you're a fit guy, you're all these things. So they're just gonna crush me with the workout. They're not gonna
Mhm.
have any compassion to the fact I just don't have energy
Mhm.
today, or I'm
Yeah.
coming off of this injury, or I have mental health issues, and I'm not pulling up blame if I say I just don't have it today.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
You know
So
what I mean? Like,
how do you share then, like, the perception is this, you feel this, like how you, I'm assuming it takes a lot of intentionality to bridge that gap.
sure, it
What does
does.
that look like for you?
Well, that's a great question because I don't have the lived experience of chronic pain. I don't have
Mhm.
the lived experience of even being overweight,
Yeah. Yeah.
right? Some of those lived experience pieces that you have lived and have credibility from that experience.
Mm.
So for those of you out there like me in a situation where you're trying to help people where you don't have that lived experience, it comes down to listening. You
Mhm.
really have to listen,
Yes.
actively listen. And it's not just hear what they have to say and wait for them to stop talking so you can get your next point in. You listen. And I feel like that is really, maybe that's my secret weapon, or maybe that's just something that I've just honed over time, or maybe it's something that's been a survival tactic for me. I don't know how you want to put that, but unless you can really truly listen to people and then go from that place with enough tools in your toolbox to be able to help them when you get that answer,
Mhm.
or have a friend who actually specializes in that so you could hand them off to that person.
Yeah. Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, but it comes back to listening because I do work with people who have chronic pain. I do work with people who have all these different
Mhm.
things, and it has to come down to listening to them.
Mhm.
And like one of the ladies who comes to my online class would be like, I'm gonna just do what I can today, and I'll probably just sign off when I feel like my body's done enough, and I'll just get a sit down.
Amazing.
You know what I mean? And
Yeah.
just be able to hear that I get that, and yes, like Tammy say, and observe. I
Mhm.
get that, and we'll be doing the class, whatever, and she'll just be like, click off, and I
I
know
want to,
exactly what that means.
yeah, I want to like pause on that though, because
Sure.
you're saying like, oh, she just does this thing, but the fact is that like, and I'm sure you know this, but that speaks so much to what you have intentionally done and the space you have created and the rapport you have created with her, and obviously the way you speak and the way you listen, for her to have the autonomy and the, like, people use the word agency, but like also the word I want to, like, the awareness of,
Mm-hmm.
this is what I need, this is where I'm at, this is what I can do. The confidence to come to you and say, this is what I'm doing today. And knowing that she will be met fully with support and that you
Yes.
want her to talk to you is
Yes.
absolutely huge. Like, that does
Yes.
not
Rachel.
happen in a lot of fitness situations, you know? So the fact that,
Right.
like, she didn't just say that. Like, I know that
Mm-hmm.
that is like a lot of cultivation on your part into like what you're
Yes.
creating.
Right. Yeah, exactly. And it's funny, like Jill just came into the chat here. She's an author, and I've seen some of her posts about uh, weight loss and just expectations that are put out there in the media to be certain things. So I feel like I'm forever fighting that culture too, right? So if people
Yes.
can find a safe place where they can move to
Mm-hmm.
their ability level,
Mm-hmm.
one, be educated on what's happening in their own body,
Yeah.
and then also in this lady's case, there's days where she can get through a whole class, and this has happened much like your story, where she's got through a whole class and it's like, that looks great, let's try this variation, you got it,
Mm-hmm.
that looks awesome, let's do this, amazing, and how you feel? Oh, I feel great
Yeah.
today, thanks so much, see you next week,
Yeah.
awesome. And then I see her the next time, she's like, the stuff we did last week, I was sore
A
for
little too much.
6 days, and that was a little too much. And I didn't know it until day 3,
Yep.
even though I felt awesome the next day. So we're just going to do
Mm-hmm.
5 minutes today. And then I'll probably, you know what I mean? So that's kind of
Yeah.
like giving space for all of that, because it,
Yes.
even from on my end, when you think that you're doing the right job, and then you realize that they know their body enough to know that it was
Mm-hmm.
too much. Honestly, sometimes I feel like I failed them. I should have picked up on the right
Oh,
cue. I should have been a little bit more
no.
observant. I should have read that cue, and
Mm-hmm.
I should have told them to slow down, even though they wanted to go ahead. Because I know, like within your body too, I'm sure there's
Mm-hmm.
times when you feel awesome and you know that this worked last time. You do the exact same thing and you get a different
Mm-hmm.
result. Like that's the nuances of your
Yeah.
body.
Yes, but I will say, I mean, there's so many factors that go into feeling a flare up, feeling like something was too much. It could be hormone, it could be stress, it could be weather, it can be like just things are just autoimmune stuff just flaring up today. Like, and there would be no way you would know. And what I actually love about what you're saying is that I feel like from what I'm hearing you say is that you operate under the assumption that somebody can move and they can listen to their body and they
Yes.
can have this empowering experience. And so if they're saying, I can, and then you're like, okay, let's go there, right?
Mhm.
That's not on you, right? If like tomorrow they're like,
Yes.
maybe I shouldn't have, because I guarantee you, in the moment for them, it was still so like one of those, oh my God, I can't believe it moments that like they could.
Yes.
And
Yes.
do they want to do that all the time to where they push themselves for being sore for 6 days? No, but they listened to their body. Their body said, we can do this. They learned they could do it. And now they're learning the nuances of that on their own. Like,
Yes.
that's not something you can give them. Like, you can't tell them, yeah, today it looks like your cortisol levels are a little spiked, so we're gonna be like,
Yeah.
unless you did like
True.
a blood draw every time you went in,
I do a blood draw
like
every time. Yeah, yeah. For my
every time you get
car.
immediate
Yeah.
results, your
Right.
ANA
Yeah.
levels are here.
Yeah.
It's like,
Yeah.
no, there's no way, and they wouldn't know either, right?
True.
Sometimes you know an immediate like, oh no, that's a no,
Hmm.
right?
Yes.
But I think operating, and this is something that like I have seen in training with like instructors I've had, and honestly like how I was trained, I don't know that we're taught to operate under the assumption that one, people know what they're doing, two, that they can do the stuff. Like so many times,
Yes.
like, oh well, it doesn't look perfect, so let's give like a million modifications and then
Hmm.
make the tension like a quarter spring and then move like 2 centimeters, and that's good. And then, like, it's like,
Right.
what if we
What did I?
assumed
Yeah.
that they could do it?
Yes.
Like, what if we
Yes.
assume that they could move and move well and feel great?
Yes.
And if it's not feeling great, they can tell us.
And yeah, exactly. That's a good point. Like,
Yeah.
I would start from what can you do, not what can't you do.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. That's true. And also, and thank you for saving me from my "woe is me" there moment,
Yeah.
because I do remember too that even in that situation, that is someone that I've educated on how to listen to their body.
Mm-hmm.
So not
Mm-hmm.
only do they know and feel and whatever, I've also armed them with enough tools and cues within those exercises to know what to listen for. So I've given that to them. So like I trust that even
Yes.
when they tell me those things, that they are doing it from a place of being educated on what to listen for within themselves.
Yeah.
Right.
Absolutely. Like ultimately, who is responsible for, like, this is something Jenna said, right? Like, what are you actually responsible for? Like
Yes. Yes.
ultimately, who is responsible for for moving their body and the results
Hmm.
of that? They are,
Yes. They are.
and
Yeah.
that's
Right.
the ultimate thing. And then they're coming to you because they think you're the best person to pull the best stuff out of them, right?
Right. Exactly. Exactly.
Yeah.
So yeah. So to Tammy's point here about some don't have the body awareness, I'm talking within the context of people who have the body awareness because I, in part, have given them some of that body awareness. Plus what they brought to the table, like in my context, in those
Yeah.
examples,
Yeah. Yeah.
you know.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Um, I want to be like tactful in how I say this, but I hear
Hmm.
this term a lot. And I
Hmm.
I remember saying something along the lines of like, you're the expert of your own body, right? And another instructor commenting like, but we don't know what they do know or don't know. So it's not that simple.
Hmm.
Um, and I do think it's that simple. Like,
I was
I
actually
think
gonna say I think so too. Go ahead. Yes.
Yeah, yeah,
Mm-hmm.
and I don't know how, I don't want to put words in Tammy's mouth. I love Tammy. I love everything she's, saying.
Mm-hmm.
But I also feel like we can overcomplicate that too, right? Like
Yes.
anybody that walks through the door, like, is my hand up? It's up. I have body awareness. Like that is
Yes.
my. I'm not
Yes.
confused about it.
Right.
And so I don't think it needs to be deeper than that. Now, are some people
Well,
more?
yes. I have a story when you're finished your line. Please go.
Yes. Like, are
Yeah.
some people more in tune? Have they already had a
Mm-hmm.
lot of time building up that muscle of tuning in and listening? Sure. Are some
Yes.
people more aware than others? Sure. Are some people more coordinated in when it comes to what we're looking for in Pilates? Yeah, for some people it comes more easily, but I really dislike when I hear things like, well, they don't have body awareness.
Mm-hmm.
I had an instructor at like a jujitsu class. It was my son's like second time doing jujitsu, and he's there just to have fun. Like he's played soccer and he's over there talking to the goalie of the other team about a birthday party. Like
Right.
he wants friends. Like, okay, great. He's like 7. Go,
I
I
wonder
don't
where he gets
care.
that from. Like where like I don't know.
Mommy.
Yeah.
No, but I remember, I will never forget this. My husband took him to the second jujitsu class, and it was a weird situation where like one group he was kind of too old for, but the other group he was a little young for. And so they're like, well, let's try him in the older group today. So they tried him in that one, but those kids have been going for years. So even though they're around his age, he was complete novice thrown into like they've been doing this for 5 years or something. And the instructor said in front of him to my husband, he has no body awareness. And I was like,
Mm.
no, no. Like it hurt my heart. And obviously, as
Yeah.
his mom, I'm like, you know,
As a movement
internally, I'm
person
like,
too, you're like,
mama
what?
bear, like,
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
No, but I'm like, and I don't think they meant it in any. They're just like, this is not a good fit, right? But to
Yes.
me, I'm like, the words we say are so important, and to our
Yes.
people, yes, but also to ourselves because it affects the mindset we go in with. Do we
Mm-hmm.
believe fully that people know their body and have body awareness? And that might be on a sliding scale, sure, but like,
For
do we
sure.
believe that they have body awareness? Do we
Mm-hmm.
believe that they are the expert and full, like they are their own guru? Do we believe that?
Yes.
And if
Right.
so,
Right.
then we talk a very different way. We don't talk like
Absolutely.
they don't have it. Maybe it's not great. Like, these
Yeah.
aren't the way. It's like when a teacher's like, you start my class with an A and you work down, or you start with nothing and you earn it. It's
Right.
like,
Yeah,
it's one of
exactly.
the
Exactly.
two.
Yeah. Yeah,
I don't know.
exactly.
I just
Or
talked a
do
lot.
we
Sorry.
or no, 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 that's it's all good. Because I mean I think that like maybe sometimes we're interchangeably using body awareness and proprioception
Yes.
incorrectly. Right? Because I can give you an example
Yes.
of I had a client back in the day at Lifetime where there's like a reverse, like a decline bench, and you had to lean back, grab onto the bar, and do like a straight leg raise, right?
Sure.
So first round, first set, lies down, bang, he hits his head on the frame. So I'm like, okay, watch your head, whatever. Second set, sets up, lies down, bang, hits his head again. I'm
Oh,
like, okay, does it?
funny.
Third set goes down, bang, hits his head a third time. And I'm like, this guy has no proprioception, has no sense of where his body is in space. So he's
Right.
aware that his arm is here or that his head's here, but
Mm-hmm.
like maybe sometimes it's a question of proprioception more so than body awareness.
Yes, absolutely. Also, that is something I'm very sensitive to, very weirdly, with EDS and Ehlers-Danlos syndrome. Low proprioception is one of the top like things as like a symptom. Like not only do we bruise easily and dislocate things and whatever, but it's not uncommon. Like if you meet other people with EDS, that they will have random bruises all over their shins. Like the
Yes.
amount of times I have walked into my own reformer, like, and it's in the same spot,
No one, no one like moved it on you. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
How do I always have a bruise here? And then like one day I
Yes.
will hit it again. I'm like, oh, that's why, because I always graze the side of it. You think I
Yeah.
would know after 10 years, like not to walk in the corner of the
Right.
reformer, but like,
Yes. But
you
you're
know,
aware.
but
You
I'm
have body
aware.
awareness.
Right.
Yes.
Anyways.
Um, well, okay, so that was the one point to what you're saying. So it was maybe proprioception. And the other part too is quite
Hmm.
simply vocabulary. So when
Hmm.
we talk about how where there's body awareness or this or that, the other, sometimes people know these things about their body, but we're giving a vocabulary around what they already know,
Yes.
right? So then they
Yes.
can articulate in a better way or more succinct way what they're experiencing,
Hmm.
what they're feeling, what they have, what they don't have. So that's part of our job as movement teachers,
Hmm.
coaches, educators, whatever you want to put in that blank there, to say like we are giving you a vocabulary around your lived experience.
Yes, yes. And like playtime to explore that, right? Like
Yes.
when, especially as adults, do we hone in that much and like just play around and then be like, what does this feel like? What does that feel? Like
Yeah. Right.
it's so fun. It's one of
Right.
my favorite things to ask people is, what did you have to think to get here? And then I pause for a long time. And I ask them,
Mm-hmm.
and it's just awkward silences most of the time I'm teaching, right? Because I'm like, looks cool, and I even
Yeah.
preempt, like, I preface all my sessions with like, there's gonna be awkward silences, and that doesn't mean anything's wrong. It means like, I just want you to move and you're doing great.
That's that's a magical opening, honestly.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
And so, but then when I see like, and it's those aha moments, right? But it's not that we created them, it's that we're giving, like you said, vocabulary to it. So when I see that happening where I'm like, oh, I think they just really felt this, or I can see they turned this on, or they found this new space or something like that, then there's the pause, hold that. What does it feel like? What did you have to think to get here? Because when we
Mm.
first laid down, it didn't look like this. So what was the shift?
Yes.
And then they're like,
Yes.
oh yeah, I was just, that makes sense. I was thinking about my left heel a lot, or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
And they're like,
Mm-hmm.
yeah, let's keep playing with that idea, and then
Right. Right.
and
Right.
then it's this dance instead of like going through the stuff, right?
For sure. And then as a teacher, when they do that, that might become my new cue for that exercise.
Uh, Absolutely. I don't say
So,
abs to everybody, right? Like I have one girl,
right.
like if you I say abs, she like does like the pelvic tuck, right?
Yeah.
Like embraces it.
Yeah.
And so like some people I say, we're gonna get cozy, because if I don't say that, they will not flip on their stomach. Like,
Right.
you
Yeah.
know, like
Exactly. Yeah.
some people I don't say inhale, exhale. I'm like, face. you know
Hmm.
like
Yeah.
what
For sure.
cue is their language, and then we
Yes.
repeat it back to them, and now they have
Mirror it.
this working,
Yes.
this new working understanding and vocabulary, which is
It.
really
Yeah.
awesome.
It is. It's so funny. Like, so in that example where you say like, well, what did you do? And they say like, well, I just moved my left. I pushed my left toe forward. So
Mhm.
then I hear that and like, okay, that's great. Keep going with that. And then I'll have the next client. And when I'm doing the exercise, I'll be like, okay, so now push your left toe forward. And then they do it like perfectly. And I'm like,
Yeah. Like, why isn't that in the manual?
why? I totally, and like, I'm kicking myself because I'm like, that was such an efficient cue.
Yeah.
And I got it from my last person and it worked for the next three people after
Yes.
without that same self-discovery dialogue. I just like threw that cue
Hmm.
at them and it worked. I'm like, man, that was so much more efficient.
Yes, yes, because that's like how what the experience of what we're doing is, right? And so it's easier to
Yes.
just carry that over than to try to
Yes.
keep translating every time,
Yeah, for sure. So I'm not gonna lie, because sometimes I get mad at that because I'm like, that was a better cue than my cue. Like that was, I'm like, that was better
Yeah,
than what I was using. I'm gonna just
I love
toss
it.
that cue I've used for like 6 years because someone said left toe and it works better.
All you need. Yeah,
Okay,
yeah.
that's all I need. And there's a bunch of comments here that I've missed because we've been in
Let's
this
get to
conversation. So
them.
I'm gonna circle back to
Yeah.
one of them from earlier.
Hmm.
Meant to Move said, and if I can add, great listening and then trusting them rather than assuming that they are weak. So observing is good too. So I think that trusting them piece is it too, right? Because sometimes we don't trust what what people are telling us. It sounds weird to say, right? But they say like this, and you're like, no, I think you can get a little bit more of that. Like, no, I think that like sometimes there's that dialogue, and
Hmm.
other times you just blindly trust them and they're right, right? So I mean, like just knowing who you
Mm.
have in front of you to be able to have those conversations when you need to safely challenge them a little bit and actually just keep them right where they are at home.
Yeah, and that's like a dance too, right? Like
That's the dance
sometimes it's
too. Yeah.
both. Like sometimes it's trusting them, letting them do like 5 reps of this way they want to do it, and then it looks awesome. And then you're like, and what if we do it this way? And then
What
they
if we
then
do
they
it that way?
trust you, and then they do that, and then
Yes,
like okay,
exactly.
find it in between that feels good to you, and
Yep.
then they do the thing. Yeah.
Yes, absolutely. And then the sharing spaces comment here is you provide the tools for self-reflection so people can cultivate, I love the word cultivate, their self-awareness, including body awareness, right? So you're just
Hmm.
creating
Hmm.
like a fertile soil where this self-awareness can be cultivated.
Yes, love that.
Yes, tools equals vocabulary. Yes.
Hmm.
And Stefan, Seed for Grace just came in. Mr. Joshua, what's going on? Hey, everybody. Um, I feel like we could just do this like every Friday. This is so fun
I mean, I'm about
because
it.
it's like 55 already.
I
And
can't believe that. I still have a list of questions for you.
okay, fire off. Like, give me like one or two questions depending on how long my answers are. Let's see what goes.
Okay, okay. I want to know. Okay, so you've been teaching like you said 10 years ish?
In the Pilates world, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
Okay. Um so I want to know like what was the how long have you been doing core conversations and like that type
Okay,
of thing? And what was the like bridge the gap for me between you're teaching Pilates to you're talking to all the Pilates and fitness people and having these amazing conversations like on the daily. Like how does that what's that like?
sure. Okay, cool.
Yeah.
So the core conversations, these Instagram lives and everything that comes offshoots
Mhm.
from that, started with the pandemic, with the quarantine. So like maybe the second week of our lockdowns,
Wow. Wow.
right?
Yeah.
So when remember that time when everybody and their brother was doing like a free Instagram live Pilates class? And
Yeah.
then you see like there was like 700 like live little icons at the top of your screen, and everyone was just like Pilates, 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 Pilates. Well,
Yep.
I didn't want to compete with like Blossom and Kathy Ross Nash and John Claude Nelson and
Sure.
all these guys doing Pilates classes, right? So I
Fair.
figured
Yeah.
at that point, and like with all due respect to all those guys, and I'd say that just because I think that
Mhm.
we're all great teachers. Um, but at the same time, I thought, okay, well, that's cool. So what are you doing? So I just talking to my wife, I said, I'm going to do an Instagram live at 10 o'clock every single day. And I'm just going to just like open up and just say, okay, Carissa, you're doing a class, what online classes do you have? What pivots are you making during your business? And,
Mhm.
let's give you a quick shout out. Cool.
Mhm.
Right. So I started to do that. And let's say, for example, I'm talking to you right now. And then because of the way Instagram works, your audience is now coming through the feed, right? So
Yeah.
we
Yeah.
would so we'd be having this conversation, and then you say, "Oh, Seed for Greatness, you got to check out the guy. Stefan's a friend of mine. You got to hear what his story." So I'm like, "All right, cool, Stefan, do you want to join us?" So then he would come on the live, and then I'd have a conversation. What do you do? Whatever. Oh, you're not even
Mhm.
Pilates. You're like a motivational person. Oh, that's cool. That's a great story. That would happen, and then over time it would be like, okay, that's Miguel Silva in Portugal, right? And like, okay, cool, well, he comes on the live, and then after a while it's like, well, I'm gonna do one of these tomorrow, do you want to be my guest?
Love
And
it.
then like Saul Shoza would say yes, and then I found out after talking to him for an hour, he's a big dog, and he's like the person that Moira brought to to Plies in South, in San
Wow.
Francisco and
Yes.
stuff. So I start to hear, because I was really like a rookie in the Pilates world, I didn't
Mhm.
know who these people were that I call like that
Yeah.
were like actual icons in the industry, who were
Yeah.
just real people who want to have a conversation. I'd ask them questions about how they found Pilates, what pivots they're making right now, who their
Mhm.
ideal client was. And because I was doing these conversations every day, there was a consistency with it. And I was just pleasantly surprised at how many people were saying yes to
Mhm.
these conversations. And it just grew from there. So when someone like you comes on, we have a great conversation. And then tomorrow it would be someone like John Claude Nelson, who's now become a good friend. But then you have these conversations, and everyone just has these real core conversations about like who they are and
Yeah.
how they found this work and how they've been frustrated with it and how they've been inspired by it. And it's just been momentum, and it's just being
Mhm.
consistent with it is turned into these authentic connecting points with people in the industry.
Yeah.
And then you layer in, like the racial awakening that happened with George Floyd, and then all
Mhm.
these other things, even just like recent events. We're the way we do Pilates is the way that we do life, really, right? So you
Yeah.
see how we have these conversations about chronic illness or about race or about inclusion or prejudice, right? We talked about prejudice today. Like people
We
look at you
did.
as being young-ish, fit-ish, that skinny-ish type thing,
Yeah.
and then they say, okay, she doesn't know anything, but the
Hmm.
reality is that I have this lived experience that is going to help you if you give me a chance.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So
Yeah.
we have real talk here. So that's kind of like, my wife came up with the name Core Conversations. We're having core conversations right now.
I love it. I love it. And
Yeah.
then you mentioned your wife kind of being like it sounds like your biggest cheerleader, but also like kind of being like, go do this, like push,
Yes.
like a little push. If
Hmm.
she hadn't been in the picture, what was your hesitancy, or did you have any to kind of like launch this, or is it more just like having that support in your corner was like, okay, I'm going to do this. Like, what does that make sense?
Yeah, that's a good question. And that's I guess it's the nature of a relationship where like I would just do it. Like this was
Uh
going to
huh.
happen anyways,
Yeah.
but
Okay.
it looks like this because of her. You know what I mean? Like it's
Got
got like a slick icon, it's got a cool
it.
name because of her. But I would have done it and it might have been that messy action like we've talked about, right? Like
Sure.
which is kudos to anyone who wants to do something. I'm always like, go, just do it. It doesn't matter what it looks like. No one's gonna see it for the first 6 months anyways. Just go. Right?
Okay, that's my other question. So
Yeah.
consistency. You are doing this like every day. You've been doing it for
Hmm.
2 years.
Yep.
When did you feel like that momentum was growing? And how often did you feel like, if ever, discouraged or like, I don't know if I want to keep this up? Or like, what's the
Ooh.
tipping point there? You know?
Okay, so this has got to be the last answer because this is gonna be a long
Okay,
answer.
I'm
And I heard the doorbell ring from my client, so I'll try and summarize it. So
sorry.
there's a few points that I think were significant. One of them was with a DJ by the name of DJ started from scratch. Create like amazing DJ, and he's like well known in the industry. He opens for Russell Peters. So if you watch any Russell
Okay,
Peters things, he's a Toronto guy, but he's open for Russell Peters. So he's always a guy that
cool.
you need in the background on Netflix, everything. Anyway, so he was on and he talked about mental health. I had never met this guy before, but he's just down to talk to anyone, just a super nice guy. And it was like a Barbara Walters interview where he talked about mental health and dealing with substances and dealing with how he coped and all these things. And it was just such like I said goodbye, and my wife and I were like, "What was that?" Like that was
Yeah.
so impactful and just so transparent and just so empowering. So that was huge, and that opened the door for people of other industries who just want to help people move and feel good. And then the other one would be simple things like having like Brooke Seiler in, or who were just like you see them as way out there when you realize they're just really just beautiful
Mm-hmm.
people. And when they come in the space and they're like, I love what you're doing. This is so wonderful. Like this is so great. And then someone sees that Brooke was here, and then they're like, "Yeah, sure, I want to be on here," right? Like, you know what I mean? Like,
Right,
so,
right.
that sort of thing. So when authentic people that have some kind of recognition leverage their presence is a powerful thing, and I recognize that we have ways that we can do that as well. So I'm so grateful for people that recognize that they have some recognition and are actually using it to push the whole industry forward in those ways. So I think that like those
Mm-hmm.
moments with guys like him just sharing the story, and the other moments with people who have some recognition lend their image to this to amplify the voices of everybody. Those are
Yeah.
powerful moments, right? So
Yeah, that's huge. Love
yeah.
it.
So I don't
Love it. Love
I
it.
don't want to make it sound like I'm name dropping because I really, really, really appreciate how those people have shown up and have validated the work that everyone is doing in the industry.
Yeah, absolutely. No, I mean that's huge. I think that's awesome. I love
Yeah.
watching it, and I've just seen you pop up so many times, and I'm like, oh, what's he up to today? You know, and then see like I get to
Mm.
see little glimpses of cool things, and just your consistency and authenticity are the two things that have stuck with me. I'm like, that has to take tenacity, and there have to have been moments where like, uh, or
Oh
I don't
yeah.
know, or what am I doing,
Yes.
because I get like that, and so it's awesome to see somebody like just be so
Just push
consistent
through it.
and be able to share so much with people. It's fantastic. So I love it.
Thank you. All
Yes,
right. So
yes,
we'll do it around three, and I'll answer the second part of the question.
yes,
All right.
yes, fantastic. Have
All
a
right.
good one.
Okay, we gotta run out. Thank you so
Bye.
much again, as always. It's so good.
So
Okay.
fun. Bye, everyone.
Thank you. Take care. Bye, everybody.